Welcome back once again to Inside the Pile on a Midwest College Football Podcast, joined as always by Clinton Boring. My name is Ryan Satkowiak. Clinton, we have a bracket. It's finally here. The college football playoff matchups have been set. How are you, sir?
Ain't nothing I love better than bracket madness, baby. We don't even have to wait till March anymore. We get this shit in November. Let's dig it.
It's technically December, but
Whatever. Great, pretty good weekend. I had a good Friday. Played some paper football with my wife, Ryan. Can you tell me the last time you played paper football?
Probably like 6 years ago.
Dude, I probably played in last time 8th grade. My dad and I would sit there and play for hours. And then we also played some two-handed euchre. So that was fun. And then yesterday was all about the game, man. I left at 10. I got back at 10 this morning. I've been to this game 5 times now. I've been there with Michigan. I've been there with Ohio State. I've now been there Penn State, Oregon. That was the most lethargic pre-game atmosphere in Indianapolis I've seen in the 5 times I've been there. And my buddy's been to every one of them since 2011, outside of the COVID year when no one could go. He said that was also the worst atmosphere he's ever seen as far as pre-game. There were no Oregon fans at all. I'm telling you, that stadium, I don't know what you could see on the TV, 75-25 Penn State.
Yeah, that's what
easily.
It looked like. That's what it looked like.
And it was, if that's as close as I'm going to get to Happy Valley to you and I get our happy asses out there, those fans are intense, man. It was fun. I was even less impressed with the Oregon jerseys in person. I really wish they'd had something green versus what they wore last night. I think that would have been a great contrast to the all white for Penn State, or the white and blue, right?
They do not have blue pants, Clinton.
All white. Yeah,
they do not have blue pants.
Got home today and just hung out with the kids, so it's been good. I enjoyed watching the playoff show. That is the first time I sat and watched any of it all year.
You fool.
I enjoyed. Well, I mean, I was walking around with the kids, so how directly did I get to watch it? But it was entertaining. I'm glad we got to see when the times came out. I think it's really interesting. The time placements. ABC giving a gift to Ohio State to have an 8 p.m. instead of.
You knew it was going to happen.
I did, but just thinking of Fox with 6 straight noons and Ohio State sitting here with a reprieve of damn, we finally got a night game and it's a playoff.
ESPN is looking at those money cannons and they see Notre Dame on Friday night, Ohio State Saturday night.
And you know why, Ryan? Because they're not stupid.
Mm-hmm.
They're not dumb. But other than that, it was a great weekend, man. How are you?
Ready to talk some playoffs, man. Let's get this thing going here.
So we start in playoffs, or are we going to recap our 2 championship games first?
Well, I guess we could start.
I think we owe them a quick recap because the Ohio Bobcats whipped the Miami Redhawks ass.
Yes, they the Battle of the Bricks redo in Detroit, Clinton, and aside from a opening possession field goal for Miami, this one was all Ohio, a 38-0 run to end this game.
Roll Bobbies, baby.
38-3, a 10-win season for Tim Albin, who
has a send-off to Charlotte.
Is going to Charlotte to be their head coach. I saw that on John Bryce, who does Football Scoop, also writes for Irish Illustrated, and he posted on the Irish Illustrated message board. It was 1:30. It was Tim Albin is going to be has been offered the position at Charlotte. I'm like, he's playing a football game right now. What the hell? So that was kind of jarring. But when you texted me, I'm like,
imagine you finished the game. You're like, hey guys, great season, first MAC title since 1968. See y'all later.
I'm going to North Carolina.
What a smack in the face for the Bobcats, man. And now I'm kind of bummed because I think we're probably gonna lose Tyus. Probably gonna lose Navarro. I don't know if Coleman Owens if he's eligible to come back.
Is Tyus a senior?
I'm not sure, man, but I'm just kind of bummed. We get our MAC championship and then the coach rolls out. I mean, the last time we promoted from within because Albin had been with Solich for 15 years. So I don't know what they do now. And then this was the theme of yesterday. Marshall's head coach won the Sun Belt championship and he's peacing out for Southern Miss.
Well, that was a weird one too, because he didn't have a contract for next year. And it leaked that they were going to hire NC State's DC as their head coach before Charles Huff even announced he was leaving. It was weird. There was something weird going on with that one.
So Are those even though, real quick, are those even upgrades? Like, is Charlotte better than OU outside of weather? Is it
I mean,
better
from a
than OU?
resources standpoint, probably.
My goodness.
Dude,
And
no
Albin
one,
has no
dude,
ties.
no one,
Albin is from Oklahoma, so
nobody wants to coach in the MAC. The MAC is the hardest conference to coach in because everyone has the same amount of resource. Like, there's no resource advantages in the MAC. It's just, are you a better coach than the guy who's across from you?
yeah, I think Albin has certainly proved himself. 2 MAC titles in 3 years. Well, appeared in 2 MAC titles in 3 years. Arguably could have won a second one if Rourke isn't blowing an ACL in his first one.
Well, like you had to look like Sean Lewis had to demote himself to then get another head coaching job, and he still didn't even get that great of a head coaching job.
And speaking of head coaches, though, give me the news you gave everyone else for Purdue today, Ryan.
Yes, UNLV head coach Barry Odom is allegedly going to be the next Purdue head coach. I like that hire for them a lot. Former
I like
Missouri head coach. I think he was the Arkansas defensive coordinator for a couple of years before getting the UNLV job. So I like that hire for him. I think it's a good hire.
I think Purdue's had a pretty good exodus this past few days, especially Thieneman and Max Clare.
Plus, there's been a lot more.
Second tight end.
I don't remember the kid's name, but he was a 5-star cornerback in 25.
Shittasala?
No, it wasn't Shitta.
Oh, damn. I was hoping it was Shitta.
It was a 5-star cornerback from 25 who reclassed to 24, and he's in the portal too. So pretty much anyone not worth a shit on Purdue is leaving.
So what do we see of UNLV? Does he pull like a Signetti type deal?
Oh, 100%.
Bring some kids from UNLV? I would assume you're going to see the quarterback come with him.
I would venture a guess that he's probably going to bring a fair amount. I don't know. I know Purdue's a good academic school, so I don't know what their like incoming transfer portal situation is.
I bet they'll let it slide to make sure they have a decent.
I guarantee it's not on like the same page as like a Northwestern or a Stanford, where it's like we don't give a shit about the football team. You have to be a good student to get in here. But
maybe if UNLV's current quarterback doesn't want to come, maybe they can call their old one.
Yeah,
officially in the portal Monday. Bring Sluka to Purdue.
Jesus Christ.
What a banger start to the Purdue era. But no, we were driving in. We were listening to the MAC championship, had that up on my phone at the same time as the Big 12 championship. Props to Arizona State. What a route.
Both of those games were ass
over in a heartbeat.
Yeah.
But yeah, proud of my Bobcats, man. Hell yes. What a great win. And then the Big Ten championship, so we can summarize it quickly. I thought at multiple points in that game, Oregon was going to blow Penn State's doors off.
Oh, yeah.
Penn State, again, watching a game in person versus on the TV, I always find is a little bit different. And seeing Oregon's speed like in person, my God, especially Tez Johnson. The dude is lightning. Mm-hmm. You know who's not good? Evan Stewart.
Interesting.
He dropped all the passes they threw to him. He threw like 2 and he dropped them. He didn't get open at all.
I thought you were about to drop some like all 22 level knowledge that.
No, he was unimpressive. He didn't do anything. Jordan James, certified dude, runs very hard. Noah Whittington, very fast. Why am I blanking on their second string tight end who is young and going to be there? He's a beast. What a hurdle. Seeing that in person was amazing. Mm-hmm. Penn State DBs, maybe you should not look at the ground when you try to tackle somebody. Mm-hmm. But I tell you what, as fast as Oregon is and seeing that speed, and Penn State does not have the speed to keep up with them. I don't know what teams are going to. But I tell you what, they beat their ass on the ground. Penn State ran for over 300 yards in this game. I don't care that Oregon's getting what?
290.
Yeah, it's 300.
Listen,
if I don't care if Oregon's getting that next 2 to 3 weeks off, you better fix your run defense because Tennessee holds the SEC, all SEC running back in Dylan Sampson. Mm-hmm. Ohio State, when they run the correct offense, has Quinshon Judkins and Travion Henderson. That's not a pretty situation for you coming into play. You're giving up 300 yards to Penn State. Now, Penn State's no slouch running the ball, but Oregon's got some defensive problems they need to fix. Yes. Drew Aller pieced them up late. He made some fantastic plays. People need to get off his back finally. Kid played his ass off. Dylan Gabriel, though, lights out, man. Like watching him in person and watching him make his reads when pressure's in his face, he does not flinch. If there's one reason why Oregon's going to win the Natty, it is that kid right there. because he is phased by nothing. I know he's in year 10, and that's probably why, but he is phased by nothing.
Can you read, Clinton?
Yes, I got it. So you want me to read it out?
Yeah.
I was just reading it myself. I thought you were going to read it.
Oh, it's gone.
Now it disappeared.
Long-time listener, first-time caller. Why do you think Penn State got ranked above Ohio State, even though they got 2 losses, including a worse loss to Oregon? Ohio State lost to Michigan, but Penn State lost to OSU.
We kind of talked about this pre-show.
I
kind of thought the committee just gave respect to being in the conference championship this year.
Yeah. So the point that I heard elsewhere today that I kind of agree with is think about who's on the committee. It's a bunch of athletic directors. The conference championship game it's a new phenomenon. Like, this is not like a traditional thing that's been going on for 50 years in college football. It's a newer thing. And there's been a lot of heat on these games in particular, because now that they're expanding the playoff this year, they're expanding the playoff again in 2 years. The overall length of the season is getting pretty long. Like, they're playing till Martin Luther King Jr. Day. They're playing well into next semester on the academic calendar. And like, people are starting to wonder, like, do we need to keep these conference championship games? Do they actually add anything to the season? And the amount of like overall consternation about these games this weekend of, what are we going to do with the losers of these games? Are they going to be penalized? If the losers of these games start getting penalized, then there's going to be a lot more smoke, not just from, people who watch the sport, but people who are involved in the sport saying, hey, if we're playing these games and we're getting knocked out of the playoff, or we're getting knocked from hosting a first-round game to having to go on the road for a first-round game, why are we even playing these games? And I mean, we've given Lane Kiffin a lot of shit on this show for the amount of whining that he's done the last month, but I think he kind of hit the nail on the head with that one when he said that, there's some coaches who are saying, why the hell do we have to play these games if you're going to knock us down? And I think with that, and I think there's some sort of a middle ground here where, like, the way this game looked like it was trending early, like, we're 20 minutes into the game and Oregon was up 28-10 right after a terrible Drew Aller interception. And it looked like it. I'm sitting there watching at that point. I'm like, all right, that's the one that's going to kind of set this one into overdrive for Oregon here. And to Penn State's credit, they fought back, man. Like, I came out of this game a lot more impressed with Penn State than I did Oregon. Like, I thought this was going to potentially be a no-win situation. And we can kind of get into this a little bit, but like, no one's going to remember this game in 3 years, but it's going to be a loss in James Franklin's record against top 5 teams. And people are going to be like, oh, well, James Franklin can't win big game, blah, blah,
Already
blah,
saw
blah,
it numerous times.
I thought he coached his ass off in this game. I thought the way that he kept this team together when things could have gone off the rails early in the second quarter was extremely impressive. And I think Penn State proved that they belong with anyone in the country, man. Like, if we're sitting here saying that Oregon is the undisputed best team in the country, which, newsflash, they're 13-0. Did you watch the SEC title game? I didn't come out of that game thinking either of those two teams are one of the 5 best teams in the country.
Did you see JD? Is it Pickell? Is that how you told me to say it?
Yeah.
JD Pickell's tweet was, I feel like I just watched the national championship. I'm like, get the fuck out of here, man.
It was like watching 2 toddlers throwing wood chips at each other.
It was like the Ohio State-Michigan game from the.
It was terrible. It was bad football.
Listen, we're not an SEC podcast. Texas should have blown their doors off. Georgia was bad in the first half. Texas had too many penalties. Quinn Ewers and the team couldn't convert when they had to. Then Carson Beck gets injured and is out for the rest of the game, in theory, other than the game-winning handoff. Did
you see the play when he came in?
His arm was just dangling there.
It was just like he's getting an MRI, and the word is that they're worried about UCL damage.
UCL, absolutely. We were also wondering too, because I was watching this with a bunch of PTs, was his ulnar nerve. If it was an ulnar nerve, I don't think he would have been gripping the ball well enough to hand it off with his right hand.
Well, I think that's probably why that they had him take a practice snap before throwing him in there.
Okay, so
if you miss the game, wait.
Yeah.
So to set it up, if you miss the game at the end of the first half, Carson Beck is trying to throw a Hail Mary. As he's winding back to throw, his arm gets hit and his elbow gets torqued. Very clearly was the type of mechanism of injury you would expect for a UCL, the Tommy John ligament injury. He did not play the second half. He had his elbow wrapped in ice. Gunnar Stockton came and played the entire second half, and the penultimate play of overtime, he got his shit rocked. His eyes rolled into the back of his head, clearly concussed. I'm shocked that they
helmet flew off, so he had to come out.
I'm shocked that they let him do an interview after the game. And there was one point where he was like talking and he started rambling a little bit. And then I don't remember if it was Holly Rowe or whoever just cut him off and asked the next question. I'm like, that was probably a good decision. So Carson Beck has to come in one run play and he hands it off and he's like shaking his hand out and he takes a practice snap to make sure he can actually grip the football.
Yep. Just watching him run out, his arm is just dangling there.
Which also, if you're Texas, what the fuck are you doing on that play?
Absolutely.
He's not throwing the ball. He's not running the ball. He has one arm.
Yep. And at this point, when he's coming out there, you're thinking he's handed it off left-handed.
Yeah,
because he can't
just
move his
submarine
arm.
the line and knock his ass over.
Weren't they at like the 5 too?
Yeah.
So you're 5 yards away. Texas has like 5 guys on the line of scrimmage. Everybody else is in normal position. I'm like, you just stick all 11 guys in the box.
There's no reason to respect. There's no reason to respect the pass here.
I was baffled when he walks up. I'm like, what are you doing? There's no shot in hell he's throwing this ball. You run everybody at them that you can, because if this kid can't come back in, they're not going to win.
Also, let's take a moment to say a prayer for Jaden Rashada, who left Arizona State to transfer to Georgia. And the 2 quarterbacks in front of you, one guy has a jacked up elbow and the other guy's possibly concussed, and they still didn't trust you enough to put you in
to hand
the ball off. They're like, Carson, we know you might have a ligament tear and some nerve damage, but
can you do this for us to make sure we make the playoff? Because if you're done and we lose, we're probably getting Florida Stated.
Yeah, they wouldn't.
And we're going to be staying at home.
Those tweets were pretty funny. Anyway, to get back to the question at hand, the reason that, well, so like Notre Dame's the buffer here, right? Like I saw a bracket that had Ohio State ahead of Notre Dame. I'm like, they already said this isn't going to happen.
That was Ari's. That was Ari's.
I know. I'm like, why are you saying this is going to happen? They already said this wasn't going to happen. He's like, well, we can't trust. I mean, they've literally been consistent the entire 6 weeks that they've done this year. But to get back to the original,
a little bit of clickbait material there.
Oh, sure. Well, I listened to the podcast too, and they did the whole bracket, and then they got to the end, and they're like, someone posed in the chat, like, wait, Ohio State can't be ranked ahead of Notre Dame based on what they said. And they're like, oh, wait, shit, that's right. We're just going to leave it out there. I'm like, whatever. But so like, it's one of those things that I think if Penn State got their doors blown off, maybe they do fall below Ohio State. Mm-hmm. But since it was a close game, it was an extra game. I think they tried to put an emphasis on not unduly penalizing teams who played an extra game as to protect the sanctity, quote unquote, of the conference championship game, to kind of turn the heat down on their own coaches and players or whatever, whining about the need to have to play them in the future.
Yeah.
Basically money-ish.
I, as an Ohio State fan of this show, I'm fine where you put them. Because at the end of the day, if you didn't want to be behind somebody, then maybe you shouldn't have lost.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe you should have won your game.
To Michigan.
I'm going to tie this in when we get to the playoffs and talk about Alabama. Maybe you should have won your games.
Oh my God.
Dan Lanning said it best. Go undefeated, and nobody controls your destiny. You control your own destiny.
I think the Bama discourse has officially jumped the shark, because now it's all everyone being like, well, what's our incentive to schedule tough games? You didn't lose any non-conference games, and you're not scheduling tough games. You went 5-3 in your conference.
You
literally cannot make your non-conference schedule worse than it already is.
You got to Wisconsin.
Shit in Wisconsin, and Wisconsin's not any better.
Tyler, well, yeah, but they also lost their starting quarterback in that game.
Yeah,
it's not like Alabama had Clemson scheduled. That's a bad example, given that Georgia killed them. But you get my gist, right? Like, Wisconsin's not the top tier of the Big Ten coming into this year. Nope. It's a name, but they're not good.
No.
And then they lose their starting quarterback
on the first drive
game. So, and then I'm sorry, Mercer in November. Nick Saban, I love you, man, but I don't want you bitching and whining. Well, what's the incentive to schedule tough game? Like, the only thing that's tough is your own conference schedule, and you only play 8 games.
Yeah, your
4 out of conference games are a joke. And the fact that you play an FCS opponent every year in November, all SEC schools, is BS.
It's laughable.
Like, why everyone else is out here in the middle of November, whether it's Northwestern or Purdue, it's still 100 times better than Mercer. Like, it's a conference game. It's a Power 4 opponent, not an FCS opponent that you can get a bye week with, other unless you're Georgia and had to play a 4-quarter game with UMass. But I can't bite your argument when I know the argument in the situation is is for Bama, right? Because they're the team that got left out. So Saban said, whoa, I'm like, listen, homie, I know you coached them, and you'd be saying the same thing if you were still coaching them. They lost 3 games. They got blown out by Oklahoma. They got beat by Vandy, who's a little above average. And honestly, I counted against you a little bit. You blew the doors off Georgia, and you almost let them win.
Yep.
When you were at home. And this Georgia team is not Georgia of past. Carson Beck, he ain't going to be throwing gifts now because he's not going to play anymore. But he threw 2 gifts in the Texas game, and he got gifted because they were offsides on both of them. Also, 2 picks to him.
Also, the interception that well, I guess it was Gunnar Stockton who threw the interception. The other defensive back who's celebrating instead of blocking blocks that guy, and the game's over. Runs it back for a touchdown. Unreal.
Dude, I'm sitting there watching. I'm like, oh, buddy, you can't throw that. You can't throw that ball there. Nope. And then Texas can't do anything, so it doesn't matter. Good old Burt had to come out there. Burt going 2 for 5 on field goals in the biggest game of his life.
Show Bob.
Hellaciously good hair, though.
It's very good hair.
Dude's using something curly in his shampoo because
and then the funny thing too about like the same conversation about South Carolina is their non-conference schedule is already laughable, and the only reason that it was even a consideration that they could potentially make the playoff at the end of the year is because they beat Clemson on the last weekend of the season. So you're going to sub that out to play. You're good. Yeah, I know that's funny too. That was a good game. That was the night slate was very good. The morning part of this was not so good.
I mean, great championship weekend. Congratulations, Oregon. First year in the Big Ten. You got it done. We had Clemson and Georgia prevented us from getting the 4-way parlay of all new teams entering a conference and winning. But we did get 50%. That's not bad. You got our playoff sound ready? I'm ready to play off now.
All right. Sorry, my dad just texted me. We're talking things. All right. Let's do it.
What is this? There's no sound. I just hear a
what?
That's all I heard. There's no sound.
Oh, because I didn't hit live. That's super embarrassing. Good for me.
Playoffs? Playoffs? You kidding me? Playoffs?
Just me grunting on the other line. No, he texted me. He's like,
did you press that at the beginning of the show too?
Yeah.
And again, all it was like a wisp. It sounded like someone was like,
is that what?
I'm just staring at you at the beginning like, what
is
are you doing? Why are we sitting here?
Oh boy, that's super embarrassing.
Jesus Christ. This guy's been at it for almost a year now and he still can't press the right button.
Oh, I blame Riverside. No, my dad called me and he's like, I'm like, why are you calling me right now? And then he texted me. He's like, I have a place for us to stay on Friday after the game if you're interested. I'm like, yes, I would very much like to not drive back to Michigan at midnight.
So you have tickets.
Okay. Not only do we have tickets, and I looked up, or my dad looked up on Ticketmaster, like what the current going rate for those tickets is, Clinton. I thought about selling for a hot second. I'm not going to lie to you.
Well, I mean, you'd make a straight profit.
It's like $3,000.
Yeah, hell yeah.
The tickets for the Notre Dame Indiana game are off the chains right now. Which let's talk about the bracket here. No, Michael, we did not talk about that yet. We are just now getting to the playoff talk.
About to be here, Mike.
So your seeds for this college football playoff, again, these are not the final committee rankings. These are just how these teams are seeded. Your number 1 overall seed is the undefeated Big Ten champion Oregon Ducks. Number 2 seed is the Georgia Bulldogs from the SEC. Boise State gets the 3rd seed and a first-round bye, Clinton. 4 seed is Arizona State, who smoked Iowa State in the Big 12 title game. The 5 seed in this is going to be Texas, the loser of the SEC title game. Penn State stays at 6. Notre Dame drops down to 7. 8 is Ohio State. They will be hosting Tennessee, the 9 seed. Indiana, the 10 seed, will be traveling to South Bend to take on Notre Dame. SMU stays in as the 11 seed. They will be taking on Penn State in Happy Valley on Saturday at noon. And the 12 seed, Clemson, your SEC, your ACC champion, is traveling to Austin to take on Texas. That is the afternoon game on Saturday. The Friday night game is the Battle of Indiana, Clinton. Indiana, Notre Dame.
Want to start there?
Yeah, we can start there. I think there's a lot of people at Notre Dame who are pissed off about this matchup because not from like a matchup standpoint, but just like getting the away team being an in-state team from like a ticketing perspective, that kind of blows.
Well, you didn't get the dream of bringing a SEC school up in the bitter
No,
cold.
there's not like
you're getting an
not,
opponent who plays
not
in it, so
no
it doesn't matter.
Like we got SMU going to Happy Valley, which is like who cares? Penn State should win that game by 1 million anyway. Maybe not by 1 million, but then you got Knoxville to Columbus. That's hardly a move north.
Mm-hmm. They did struggle with 60 degrees in Georgia, though. And right
yeah.
now it's 2 weeks out, but they're looking at about upper 20s for this game.
Yeah,
kickoff.
I was going to say we had a big old cold front this week, and I saw everyone posting like, "This is football weather. Just wait till the South teams have to come up here." And then I took my dog out this afternoon wearing shorts. It was like 50 degrees here today. I'm like, if it's like this in 2 weeks, I'm going to be kind of pissed. But it doesn't matter for Notre Dame because they're playing another cold weather team in Indiana. Yeah, man. The tickets for this game, like I said, they're already off the chains. I looked at Vivid Seats, and the cheapest tickets are like $1,200 already. It's insane. Everyone in Indiana is jacked for this game, man. This is going to be a fun one.
Without making a pick, obviously, because we'll do that in a couple weeks. How do you, as the Notre Dame fan, feel about this matchup, Ryan? Where do you think, just in general? I think you would generally expect Notre Dame to win, but how do you feel about it?
Well,
you thought you were getting Bama. You thought you were getting Texas. You get Indiana.
Well, I never thought we were getting Texas. I thought it'd be like,
I
knew Indiana was on the radar because I figured like coming into it, because Sam asked me last night, she asked me this morning, she's like, who's Notre Dame going to play? I'm like, earthly have no true idea because they could be 5, 6, or 7, and I wouldn't really hate any of those seeds. Just like you kind of said, like I have no problem with how everything ended up seeding wise. Like I figured if it was a close game in Georgia won, Texas was going to be ahead of ND. If it was a close game, Oregon beat Penn State. Penn State was still going to stay ahead of them, and that's kind of what happened. So figured Indiana would be on the table, and I mean, Ohio State gave the blueprint, right? You just blitz the shit out of Rourke and hope you get home. Basically, I think defensively Notre Dame matches up pretty well. It sounds like Jeremiah Love is going to play in this game after his knee injury against USC, which didn't look serious at the time. Apparently there was like worry after the game that he would be out for the season, which is not great.
Wow.
So that's got me a little skittish. Howard Cross, who has not played the last 3 games with an ankle injury, it sounds like he's going to be back as well. On the other side,
he's got 2 more weeks. He better be ready.
2 more weeks. He better be ready. Yep. I think he was close to playing against USC, but he ended up not doing that. And KVA, the freshman linebacker, it sounds like he's not going to be able to come back potentially at all this season. So that's a tough loss, especially.
Just so you know, the Chargers season may be over because Herbert is down and they're, I don't know, looking at his knee, looking at his arm. They're looking at his knee right now. He might not have an ACL, folks. Chargers season. Life support. Anyways, back to your previous scheduled program.
Yeah, there we go. I mean, they should win, right? Like, they're 7.5-point favorite. I think they match up pretty well against Indiana. If you look at that Ohio State game, though, Indiana's defense did not play too poorly against Ohio State. And I mean, considering how Ohio State ended the season, maybe their offense isn't as good as we previously thought. So I don't know, man. I think it'll be a fun game for sure. The atmosphere there is going to be nuts. Just like that's going to be so cool. I'm fired up for that game, but I don't know. They're a good team, man. Like you don't go 11-1 in a Power 4 conference by accident. I don't care how quote unquote good their schedule is, especially when you're kicking the shit out of all the teams you play. So I think in terms of like game control over the course of the season, these two teams have been among the best in the country at that aspect of it. But with Indiana, what we've seen over the last couple of weeks when they played Michigan, when they played Ohio State, they played these teams that have that superior athlete on the other side of the ball as them. They got bogged down a little bit, and Notre Dame certainly fits that bill. So I'm fired up for this matchup. I can't wait
also
to dig into it a little bit more.
Quick shout out, Max. Thank you for the subscription on YouTube, man. We appreciate you. Make sure you share us with your friends and then just help us grow the show. Also, shoot us a quick message if you're still listening. And who's your favorite college football team? I assume you got somebody in the Big Ten you like, but
he's an Ohio State fan. That's my college roommate.
Okay. Oh, okay. Well, never mind. All right, cool. Well, thanks, Matt. Glad
Never
you know,
mind.
Ryan.
Never mind. Fuck you.
You don't matter. No, I'm just kidding. I'm right there with you, man. Go Bucks. Hopefully we can turn it around. This matchup, I am super enticed, man. And I wonder if some of that was the committee sitting there too. Like, you can't tell me they weren't a little juicy for this matchup too. Like an in-state, you're not making Indiana. What you could have done is make them go to Texas. If you rank Texas in a different spot.
Yep.
You could have made them play Tennessee. You could have done a lot of things. Instead, they're going to stay in their home state, travel what? An hour north? Couple hours north?
A little further than that, like 2 hours.
Couple hours north to play Notre Dame for Indiana superiority. And I love it.
Hey, it's the true battle of Indiana because they both already beat the shit out of Purdue this year.
And I think Freeman's an intense dude. Signetti's an intense dude. I think
did you see what Freeman said today?
I think I did, but I don't remember exactly.
They asked him, I don't remember what the question was, but they asked him something about what he knows about Curt Cignetti. He's like, I'm not really too familiar with him, but I did Google him.
That's great. Well, if Cignetti is half the coach that we all know he is, they're going to try to make some adjustments and or scheme around what Ohio State caused them so much trouble with. They didn't have to do it against Purdue. They didn't have to show anything against Purdue because we all knew that was going to be a whitewash. Can you make the adjustments? Because that is the only way you're probably going to stay in this game. Their defense plays well. They tackle well. They didn't really give up any massive plays, like massive TD plays to Ohio State. You did let them convert like a 4th and 20, which is pretty bad. But IU is no pushover. I'm tired of the dissing of Indiana. They deserve to be here. I think this might be the most fun matchup I could have asked for Indiana to have. I'm excited. Guys, we're going to try to work on both Sammy Jacobs from Hoosier Huddle and Jack, is it Sobel?
Yeah.
Sobel for Notre Dame. See if we can get these guys back on to join us and do a little Indiana Notre Dame preview where we'll likely just break it in half, do a 30-minute Indiana, 30-minute Notre Dame, and get you guys a good episode to get excited for that game. But I'm pretty juiced, Ryan. I'm going to stick to my guns. I'm happy Ohio State's not playing that night game because we have the Christmas preschool thing, but I'm going to leave the game. I'm going to record it and I'm going to come home. I'm going to press start from beginning and I will not be talking to you all night until I'm caught up.
No, that's fine.
Because I don't want to miss the game.
My phone's not.
That's right. You're going to be in the stadium.
Anyway.
So I'm excited for you, man. I don't know do you know how they're organizing the selling of these tickets? Like, is Indiana going to get a fair shot or are we going to treat this like a traditional home game?
Traditional home game. They don't even get a full away allotment. They only get 3,500 tickets instead of 5,000. Okay.
Unless they're sold on the secondary market.
Right. And
I bet Indiana fans are paying $1,200 to get their butts up there to watch this game.
Maybe. Man.
So
I don't know.
Again, majority Notre Dame fans. You've been there. Obviously, I have not. I have heard that Notre Dame, at least loud wise, is not the most daunting place to play.
It gets, if it's a big game at night, it gets loud.
Yeah. So we'll see. I'm excited. Let's boy, what's your reaction going to be if Indiana pulls this upset? I'm excited.
It would probably be a good thing we're apparently staying in South Bend that night because I would drive my car off the freeway on the way home.
But then we all get the matchup that you thought Indiana might have been getting if Georgia lost, which is Indiana against Georgia, but not between the hedges.
No, but it's in Nolan, so close enough.
Yeah. So
no,
hell of a first matchup.
Yeah, and that's kind of like let's not put the cart before the horse on that one, but
Notre Dame Georgia could be spicy.
For either team though, because I think your point about giving Georgia 3 weeks to prepare, especially if they need to get Gunnar Stockton out of concussion protocol and then get him prepared to play a game. They're going to need all the time that they can get, but it's hard to bet against Kirby when he has 3 weeks to prepare for an opponent.
Whether this is again no knock against Stetson Bennett, but ran Stetson Bennett out and won 2 natties with him, right? So it's not like Kirby can't coach, man. He can scheme around whatever he needs to. Georgia's D line is still ferocious. They may not have a great offense, but they play defense.
But if you look at what Notre Dame does well offensively, maybe not as eye candy as Georgia Tech, but they do run a very similar style of run game to Georgia Tech, and that just gave Georgia fits for 4 quarters.
If Beck is done, this is the year you want to get Georgia. or at least maybe the year you think you want to get Georgia.
There was a period of time in that third quarter where I was thinking to myself, did they just get better with a new quarterback?
And then you realized he can't throw and would have to play 4 quarters. So that's an easy no.
I was just so confused as to what Texas was doing with their game plan, because it's like, put 8 in the box and make him throw. And they refused to do that. And they kept getting run on.
Listen, Ryan, you didn't even need to do that. How about you just score touchdowns and not get 10 penalties in the first half? And the game's over.
Also that too. But
like Texas played an Ohio State game. You made it way harder than it needed to be. You should have blown the doors off Georgia. And now you're not SEC champs. And now you got a quarterback issue. There's already shit floating out there. Should Arch Manning start over Quinn Ewers in the playoff game?
Well, you also
I don't think if Texas beats Clemson, I don't think you're locked to beat Arizona State. That is the hottest team in the country right now.
And
they're probably going to have their, because I didn't have the sound on. Did we get word on how long their star receiver's out? Did he be back for this in 3 weeks?
I didn't hear. I had the Mac sound on the Mac game at first, so I don't know if they said early.
You could also be getting them at full strength. So
also true. But from like a Notre Dame, Indiana perspective, you also if we're talking about this being a potentially wounded Georgia team, which again, famous last word saying that, right? Like that's just asking to get cold takes, saying, "Oh my God, I'm not scared of Georgia." But if this is a version of Georgia that is not the fully charged Death Star that they had been, 2, 3, 4 years ago, this is a good side of the bracket to be on, man. Because if you look at like Oregon got screwed because you're going, sure, you get your first round bye, but then you got either Tennessee or Ohio State. Those are 2 good teams that can beat you. And then in the semifinals, if you do happen to get through that game, you get either Texas or the hottest team in the country in Arizona State.
Or if you somehow get Clemson, this is obviously a Clemson team that has found their stride and is no longer a joke.
Also true. Like
they've had to get through at Texas. They had to go beat the hottest team in the country.
Cade Klubnik
it's
playing
not
well.
It's not like Dabo hasn't been here before. He knows how to coach in the playoffs. His problem has been getting there the past few years.
Yep.
They have a really good defensive line. Oregon for getting a 1 seed, and you look at the matchup you just talked about.
They run the ball well too. Run the ball well too.
Phil Maffa, monster. If you look at who drew, I know Oregon won the Big Ten title, and congratulations, Duck fans, on doing that. Penn State got the way better draw than you, and they lost.
A home game against SMU and then Boise State, 2 games that should be cakewalks.
Now that would be a total James Franklin moment to lose one of those games. But
I was going to say let's talk about
go
that
there next
because I posed this question to you before the show. And Matt Flip, if you're listening to this, maybe you can tweet at us and let us know your thoughts. Because before the season, what do you think would have been constituted a good season for Penn State? Were we talking like hosting a first-round playoff game, winning that playoff game, and then anything after that happens is gravy? Like, that sounds reasonable?
If I remember back to what we said undoubtedly 10-2 probably gets you in the playoff. And I think Penn State, they're 11-2, but at 10-2, Penn State would have been in this year. But I think it was, remember I had brought it up. I'm like, what if you get in the playoff? Again, they made it to the Big Ten title. I guess I predicted them to go there and lose, so I got half of that right. But you go to finally make the playoff and you just lose in the first round. But my thing was you would lose to another big boy, right?
Yep.
You're playing a former group of 5 team in your first game and you're getting a group of 5 in your second game. So, excuse me, goodness sakes, that was rude. That came out of nowhere. My apologies. I don't know how you feel, man. I feel like Penn State fans will go off what you just said about Franklin. I can't remember if we said this pre-show or not, or it was on the show, is the respect for how he coached his team in this game and kept them alive in this game when they could have easily got their doors blown off. The only decision I questioned by him was going for 2 at the time he did.
That's a big
I didn't agree with that.
That's a big analytics thing. And I like it.
Don't chase points.
It's a hot button issue.
Never
but
works.
I think because there was like it might have been preseason. Freeman was on, I think, Pardon My Take or something like that. And they asked him the same question, what he would do. He's like, kick the extra point. They're like, well, the analytics say go for 2. And he's like, what?
Yeah, I remember that interview.
So I think it's
I'm kicking the extra point there, especially when you couldn't, at that point, you really weren't stopping Oregon's offense great. Like, I don't think you want to be chasing points against them. But regardless, I tweeted this out once the show came out. James Franklin, your move, buddy. There's no excuse as to why you should not be in the semifinal.
Yeah.
And especially, you should definitely win your first game. You're going to get SMU. They're the noon game, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm certain Penn State's going to throw a whiteout on this, even though it's daytime. You should be able to beat SMU. I'm not doubting them at all. And you and I need to do a little deeper dive other than Kevin Jennings and learning about them. But
listen, they're a good team, and they
are.
fought back.
They
man.
deserve to be here. You're right. They could have folded, and they like a stack of cards, and they made it. And you know your next game is no cakewalk either, as far as like having to go against Ashton Genty.
Mm-hmm.
But the size difference, like SMU is still bigger size-wise than Boise. Like I watched pretty much the entirety of the Mountain West Championship game. Boise is not that big on the line of scrimmage. But it's hard to not go against them when Oregon had to kick a game-winning field goal to beat them.
Yep.
Like, do they just rise to the occasion? Do they rise to the occasion?
Mm-hmm.
I know it's been many, many years ago, but the Statue of Liberty to beat Oklahoma, like there's something about Boise when they're good at the top of their game. They rise to the occasion of what they need to do. I'm not saying they would beat Penn State. I'm not saying they beat SMU.
Hey, that game is going to be the Fiesta Bowl. Just saying.
So
it's not the same building anymore.
But God, that is
same city.
Oh, that's not. Thank God, because that whatever grass they grew was horrific the last time we played there. Anyways, Penn State, you got to have it. I'm looking at this. And I see no reason why you're not in the semifinal playing Georgia or Notre Dame. Most likely, not counting Indiana out, but
one of those three teams.
At the seeds, the higher seeds. But imagine this one. How about Indiana versus Boise in the semifinal?
That would be crazy.
Could you imagine?
It would be ESPN's worst nightmare. Yeah. I would watch the shit out of that and enjoy it very much.
I would too.
Nobody would watch that.
It's not going to happen. Although this season's been crazy, so I shouldn't say not.
You should never say never.
I don't live in absolute.
Never say never.
So
never say
maybe
never.
a 5% chance, but you know, I think you feel the same way. There's no excuse as to why Penn State, barring some type of injury, the whole team gets the flu, whatever, that they shouldn't be in the semifinal.
Well, no, and that's why I'm curious Penn State's perspective, because it is the easiest path, and
100%. And we talked about the 5 would be, but it is the 6.
Yep, it's 6. It's definitely the 6 this year. But like everything it's all relative, right? Like if you told Penn State, you like no names or anything, you told Penn State fans before the season, like let's say they win this week, then they lose to Boise. Like you're going to host a first round playoff game, you're going to win a first round playoff game, but then you're going to lose in the quarterfinals. What would you say to that? They'd probably be like,
success.
Okay, that's fine, that's fair. But then you put the teams on, and it's like
the face on the team. Yes.
Okay, like how satisfying is it to be? Because it's like the same thing that like this was a debate on a Notre Dame message board at some point in the season where it was like, well, if we get the 5, this was like preseason, right? So this wasn't like in season. Like if we get the 5 seed and then we beat the group of 5 team in the first round of the playoffs, it's like, okay, well, we won a playoff game, but like, what's the perception of that outside of the program?
Mm-hmm.
Like, what do other people say? Like, because then you get to say, well, we ended the quote unquote big bowl loss streak, but then the counter from other people is like, well, you beat Boise State, who gives a shit?
Yeah.
So I'm curious, Penn State fans, what they would think to beating, like, let's say they beat SMU, they beat Boise, but then they lose to Georgia. Like, what would the perception be of that? Because it's like you still got to the semifinals, but you beat a group of 5 team and a former group of 5 ACC team to get there. Is that satisfying? Could be. I'm not saying it. I'm not saying they shouldn't feel satisfied. No, for sure. And like I said, I'm not saying they shouldn't feel satisfied by that because you won 2 playoff games. You got to the Final Four. There's something to be said for that. But you know that there's going to be some dickheads on Twitter who are like, who gives a shit? You beat SMU and Boise. That's not impressive. Yep. I'll play a real team.
So here's my other quick caveat while we're here. Clemson beat SMU head-to-head in their 12, while SMU's 11.
Because Clemson was ranked 16 in the final rankings.
Yeah, I just figured Clemson would eclipse them and then get higher.
No,
but the problem is, I think if you can't drop SMU too far in the final rankings, so they'd be out.
No, and that was the misnomer that people were saying is, well, why would Clemson not jump ahead of SMU even though they're seated next to each other? Well, they're seated next to each other, but because of how the rankings work and Clemson had to be in the playoff because they won the ACC, you can put them wherever you want and it doesn't really matter.
Yeah, and he had 3 losses.
Yeah,
and backed your way into your title.
Because I don't disagree with you in theory saying, well, they just played the game. How can you say they're not better? Why are they seated below? But
yeah, you'd have to shoot Clemson so far up to not knock SMU out.
Which I feel like they've done. The way that they moved teams around this year was weird because they did the same thing with South Carolina 2 weeks ago when they beat Clemson. They moved them up like 1 or 2 spots. So, I mean, I guess they're consistent, I guess. It's consistent-ish. I don't know. That's my official answer. Yep. I don't know.
That's all right. So what are your thoughts on Clemson, Texas then?
I'm just kind of out on Texas, man. Like, defense is good. Defense is good for sure. Good-ish. I have no idea what they were trying to do in this game on Saturday. Like the entire second half, like they finally figured it out towards the end when it was already like after, I think Ewers they just turned the ball over. I don't remember how they turned the ball over. Or Ewers got picked. So it was like, okay, this game's almost over. And then they clamped down. They just kind of started nuking the line of scrimmage. It's like, why haven't you been doing that the entire third quarter? This dude cannot throw the football. So I don't know if they were, I don't know. I've just not been impressed with them throughout the course of the season. Their resume is not all that great. Their best win is Texas A&M, who's 8-4 and not ranked. They lost twice to Georgia. The second time being to
that's what I mean. You couldn't even avenge your first loss, which I think stings you even more, right? Like the old adage, it's hard to beat the same team twice. You got your shot, should have blown their doors off, and you failed to do so. Yet Clemson,
I'm kind of shocked that they're the 5 seeded. That like if I had one gripe with the seeding, like I think they got the teams right. I have no issue with SMU being in and ahead of Bama. Like I think that was the correct call. I don't understand why Texas is. I can understand, like vaguely understand Texas ahead of Notre Dame. I wouldn't have done it, but I could understand it. I don't get why they're ahead of Penn State.
I'm in the camp that Texas shouldn't even be hosting a home playoff game.
And I don't think that's unreasonable. Like you have
no good wins. You could not avenge your one ass beating at home this year that came to Georgia when you should have. What are you standing on other than the fact that you're just in the SEC? And we lost to the SEC champ.
That's pretty much it. Pretty much
that's all you got. Like you can't argue. I don't want to hear, well, the SEC is a deep conference. Guys, like A&M's not a bad team, but they're not great.
That can't be your one resume point.
Going in there to win is tough, but your 8-4 is your best win to an unranked team. Like you're not standing there like Ohio State has better wins than that. Penn State has a better win than that against Illinois. Notre Dame has better wins than that. Beat a ranked Navy and a ranked Army.
Beat a conference champion.
Like, I don't care that you want to argue the SEC is deep. Those 3 teams all have better wins than you. I don't care that you played. I'm not knocking you out of the playoff. That was my one rule. You can lose. It can help you. It can hurt you. Texas should be the 9 or the 10. I don't see how they're the 5 other than they're just there because they're the SEC. I honestly, Ryan, I don't know if they would have moved Georgia if Georgia lost. Georgia might be the 5.
They wouldn't be the 5 because they were behind Notre Dame already.
That's right. So they've been the 6.
Well, they were behind Notre Dame and Penn State, so they would have been the 7.
The 7. So Georgia, I don't think Georgia would have fell in. There we go. They'd still be the 7.
Yes.
I think they would have stayed.
Probably.
But just showing Texas, I don't know. But I'm looking at this matchup. Clemson obviously had to survive to win, but hell of a game. We've already talked about Clemson can run the ball, they can throw the ball, and they got a good coach.
Hey, here's a fun little subplot for you. Cade Klubnik went to high school in Austin.
Yeah, nothing about Texas scares me. As long as Klubnik doesn't turn the ball over, Clemson's going to be fine. They're going to be in this game. I think this is about as good of a 5-12 matchup as you could have hoped for, as far as like evenness of teams.
For sure. Like Texas' defense is still really good when they're playing at their best, and they have the athletes on that side of the ball to. And we do have like their starting left tackle, who I think is projected to be a high first round pick, did not play in this game, so that certainly does not help. Did not help.
Freshman didn't do bad. He missed on one of the screens. The DE for Georgia just straight played him. He baited him, and then he ran right around his ass. Yeah, but better hope he's back.
Yeah, but like offensively, like Clemson's starting to round into form a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Wesco, the freshman receiver, looks really good, and if he's like, if they finally have a guy out wide they can trust, that unlocks a lot for a Garrett Riley
Also,
offense.
Maffa's been banged up, so Maffa's going to get 2 weeks now to shut it down.
Yep.
And
To
rest.
get healthy.
And he is a bowling ball of a load.
Mm-hmm.
And something Texas probably hasn't really played of that style of back yet this year. So it's very intriguing.
Yeah.
I think you're obviously, what's the line on this one early opening?
Well, so I think it opened at like 14, and the last I checked, it was already down to 11.
If I had to pick that game today, I'm taking Clemson plus 11.
I would probably take Clemson plus 11.
Because I think this is easily a one score, like 3 to 5 point game.
Yeah.
I don't think Texas is rolling Clemson.
Because it's like, in theory, from a talent perspective, I could see why you would have Texas favored by that much. But like with Georgia this year, like we've seen the ceiling with Georgia. We've seen the floor. Like if Georgia's on, there's not a team in the country that can beat them. The issue is they're not on all that often. I don't think we've seen Texas like truly, like maybe the first half against Michigan, but again, that's Michigan. When else have we seen Texas just like completely dominate an equal opponent?
I'm still waiting for an answer.
It hasn't happened. Like
you had your chance.
They beat the crap out of Florida when they were playing the Yale transfer at quarterback. But like they struggled with Arkansas
in that game.
Yeah, they struggled with Arkansas down the stretch.
Struggled with Vandy.
They could not put away A&M. I'm not impressed with Texas this year.
No. I think if you're obviously seeing now and by the end of the season that the loss of the players they had last year are hitting a lot more than maybe some people
sure.
thought
And you got to think too, like they had like 2 preseason catastrophic running back injuries, which probably did not help things at all either.
Yep, absolutely. But I mean, I think it's a legit question. Do you turn to Arch, who's got better mobility, and you were just clearly hampered still by the ankle injury, and in 2 weeks probably isn't going to be that much further along after he just played a 4-quarter battle with Georgia, overtime battle. So I know this one's intriguing, man. This one's intriguing. Now, I want to go to the hardest path.
Yeah, your neck of the woods.
The college football playoff is Columbus.
This literally expert level, because whoever wins this first round game between Tennessee and Ohio State will then have to play Oregon,
the number 1 team,
the number 1 seed. Will potentially, I mean, we just shit on Texas for 15 minutes, so maybe that one's not as hard. But then they're going to have to play whoever comes out of the other side between, your likely suspects are Notre Dame, Indiana, Georgia, and Penn State. That's a very difficult path.
Yep. This matchup, man, I'm enticed by it.
Very good
research.
Very, very good color matchup. I very much
wish you could go home on home. That'd be nice.
The red and the orange might be a little too close.
I probably wouldn't know which team was what.
You would be confused.
So I did a little listening to the Ohio State Snap Judgments, 2 different podcasts I follow. I kind of already knew this, but Tennessee's strength on defense is their D-line, which is similar to Michigan. The difference is their strength is on the edges, not the interior. So James Pierce Jr. obviously being the, no offense to Abdul Carter, but I think Pierce might be the number 1 overall player in this draft potentially. So clearly the best defensive lineman Ohio State's went against all year. They obviously have to figure some things out on offense. Then you go to the other side of the ball for Tennessee. Nico Iamaleava, kind of inconsistent this year. I don't think he's really torching anyone with his arm.
Agreed.
We can deep dive that a little bit better. Maybe we can pull a Vols beat reporter to get on here to help us out. But Dylan Sampson's a monster.
Very good running back.
Best running back in the SEC. Does Ohio State then work to take away the run and make Maeva beat you? The other thing to remember about Tennessee is they use all 3 of that 53-yard sideline because they space you out a ton, which makes running much easier, right? Because you don't have enough in the box. And if you want to stack the box, how are you going to cover our guys outside? However, if it was that challenging of a defense or offense to defend, then Tennessee's undefeated, right? So
you'd think that they'd be scoring more than like 28 points a game against Power 4 opponents.
Well, the guy I was with works for Tennessee this past weekend, and they don't have the receivers.
Mm-hmm.
The receivers aren't good enough. They're not Hyatt. They're not blanking on the other guy's name at this point. Cedric Tillman.
Mm-hmm.
They're not those type of receivers. Squirrel White, not that guy. Brew McCoy, not that guy. So they're heavy on Sampson. Can Ohio State, wake up and be able to stop a run game? And then you look at Ohio State is what offense you're going to get in this game. You're going to get vanilla play calling Chip Kelly, or are you going to move guys in motion, make this defense work a little harder? Are you going to attack inside and outside in the run game? Are you going to utilize Will Howard's legs? Or are you just going to run into a brick wall for 4 quarters again? I don't know. I mean, I would assume Ohio State they're going to have the advantage in this game. I would argue both sides of the ball, other than maybe Pierce as an individual. And I think Ohio State is already favored. I'm not sure what the line was, but
yeah, I think it's up to 7 now.
So it's an intriguing matchup. And then a week later, 10 days later, you got to turn it on and go play Oregon. However, the game is at the Rose Bowl, which is cool. Fantastic. If Ohio State pulls this game out, you get the traditional Big Ten on Big Ten in Pasadena, or I guess it used to be Big Ten Pac-12, but you get my gist. You're getting Big Ten matchups where it belongs. In Pasadena, California, 5:30 as the sun sets, as beautiful as it can be. And you get a rematch of what we all thought was going to happen in the Big Ten championship that you didn't get because Ohio State choked.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, Ryan, your thoughts on this one? I think it's the best matchup of the opening round by far.
Maybe it could be.
If you get the right Ohio State team, it's the best matchup.
I think for both of the teams, right? Because like Tennessee falls into the that just feels like every SEC team this year. It's like at their ceiling, they've shown they have the capacity to be really good. The issue if you're a Tennessee fan is the ceiling has only come out against like UTEP and Kent State and NC State this year. Like whenever they played a defense that can push back offensively, their passing game really struggled.
Mm-hmm.
And as bad as we've seen the Ohio State secondary be against good passing attacks, I don't know that Tennessee necessarily qualifies as a good passing attack. Like this is not Dylan Gabriel and Tez Johnson on the other side of the field.
This is not
the running back's really good.
Running.
No, it's not Hendon Hooker and Cedric Tillman. This is not the Tennessee offense of 2 years ago. Like it can be good. I don't know that this is necessarily a defense that I would trust it to be good against. Dylan Sampson's really good. Don't get me wrong, but I think the plan for Ohio State in this one is going to be pretty similar to what they did against Indiana, where they just bum rush the line of scrimmage and let the DBs go single coverage and say, good luck.
Yep. I think that's the right plan. You need to continue to pressure. You don't get home very often with 4 guys rushing.
Now the issue for Ohio State is Tennessee's defense is really good. And we've seen Ohio State's offense against other really good defenses, and it has not been pretty. But
I would expect in this game,
unless Tennessee comes out in the winged helmet, unless they bring out a new alternate uniform, Clinton, there's not going to be that same Ryan Day mental block in this game that we've seen with Michigan.
If you get Ryan Day, who avenged his loss to Clemson, or Ryan Day, who coached against Georgia, Ohio State is not losing this game.
I would agree with that. I
think it would probably be at that point close to what the spread is, a 7.5 point game. The other thing to remember, most likely, as we already alluded to, probably going to be like 20 degrees. Which team plays better in the cold? I would say both teams' strengths. I mean, Ohio State, when they run the ball, they're a good running team. Ohio State's the better passing team if they actually throw the ball because of the receivers they have. But I don't know, man. Like, is this going to come down to another Ryan Day? It's cold. Like, we have to win the rushing battle. Like, or are you just going to let it fly and run your damn offense? Because you don't even have to.
Josh, that's the stupidest thing that he does in that Michigan game is we run for more yards to win the game.
Josh
Heupel to open up the run.
Josh Heupel's not going to come in puckering up.
Nope.
You're going to come in and run their offense, which is exactly what Ohio State should do. Just run your damn offense. And this is going to be a great game. Great game. And then lead to a very fun matchup, regardless of which team wins. Obviously, my rooting interest, we know who I want to win, but I've wanted that Ohio State-Oregon game since October 12th. I wanted that rematch more than I'd like a sixth finger every once in a while. But
what the fuck did you just say?
Let's move along.
Okay. We should probably talk about Penn State because we kind of talked about Penn State, but not about this game itself. Penn State, they did not escape the big noon curse. They will be playing a early game against SMU.
Won't matter. Environment will be crazy.
It will be crazy. It will definitely be crazy. Also, kind of a body clock game in this one for SMU, coming from the Dallas is the central time zone. Never mind. I was thinking they're in the Mountain time zone. I lived in Dallas for 8 weeks, like 6 years ago. Fun fact. So maybe not. Never mind. Disregard that. Kevin Jennings has thrown for 3,000 yards this year, and he has not started every game for SMU. So really good passing attack. And I mean, you just saw it in person that Oregon had a lot of success kind of going over the middle of the field with a quick passing game. And
anytime they needed it, 3rd and 15, 3rd and 8, didn't matter. They were open. That's part of the thing that Flip alluded to is Penn State plays so much man and press man. Like you better get home or your corners better cover for a while. I don't think SMU has the speed.
Yeah,
Oregon does, but
not the same. Yeah, not the same speed as Oregon, but they're still pretty quick.
Replicate this similar game plan.
And Kevin Jennings is kind of in a similar mold of Dylan Gabriel, where he's not like an overt runner, but he can run if needed. He has just under 400 yards and 5 touchdowns on the ground this year. Their running back, Brashard Smith, is probably the engine of the offense, both out of the backfield and running it and catching it. He has 35 catches on the season. They don't have like a go-to guy out wide. I remember their tight end was pretty good, RJ Maryland, but I believe he is out for the season and has been for some time. So I'm fascinated to see this matchup. I don't know, like Penn State showed some stuff on offense this week that I did not think that they had in them, which has me thinking about them in a whole new light here. I think I'm going to have to look at SMU's defense a little bit more before I definitively proclaim, wow, I think this is a great matchup for Penn State or anything like that. I think offensively, SMU does enough well that it could give Penn State trouble. And we saw it against Clemson, how they adjusted. Rhett Lashley's a really good offensive coach, but I think Penn State's defense is a similar version to that of Clemson, just with better players, if that makes sense. So I think that could be a tough matchup for SMU if they're not able to handle the environment.
And you're also not neutral site this time. You're on the road.
To be fair,
I don't hostile environment.
I don't know how neutral going to North Carolina for that game was, but it was. This one will not be neutral.
No, this
at all. Not in the slightest.
If your ticket disparity, you're already saying, unless you're buying them all in the secondary market.
Now, SMU people are very rich, Clinton. So
they are.
Do not put it past them.
You're right. Very true. I'm intrigued by it. I think SMU. I think it's gonna be a game. Like I don't think Penn State's gonna whitewash them.
Well, no, because Penn State's that's that same thing that we're talking about with some of these other teams. Like that's probably the best game that we've seen Penn State play this season, but they also just barely beat Minnesota like 3 weeks ago.
So which team do you get? Do you rise to the challenge? This is the playoff. It's do or die now. Teams respond very differently when it's win or go home.
I think that's the most fun thing about these first round matchups is, I mean, all the spreads are like vast-ish for what you like. The cool thing about the conference title games is we had a bunch of narrow spreads. I don't think anything was greater than a touchdown. All of these, I mean, I would wager that Clemson Texas one is going to close at single digits, but that's the only double-digit one right now. But they're all at about a touchdown spread. But it's one of the, you don't have to squint hard to see how any of these teams could win the game and move on to the next round. Like I don't think that, like we talk about easier paths, I don't necessarily feel confident enough in any of the favorites that I'm like running to my DraftKings account to throw down a shitload of money on any of these teams right now.
Yeah, I agree.
And good for me is Notre Dame plays Friday, so I don't have to miss any of the Saturday games.
I don't have to miss anything either. I told Leah, I was like, don't make plans for me on Saturday the 21st. I won't be going anywhere.
Although, to be fair, if Notre Dame loses that first round game, I probably will not watch any college football that day. I'll just sit in my room and cry all day. At least half the day. And get ice cream.
Oh, my gosh. That'd be great.
No, it wouldn't, Clinton. Don't say that.
Ice cream cures all.
I had some ice cream last night. It was really good. I think that's all we have for today, unless you had any other loose hanging. Well, no. I guess we didn't answer Michael's question. Who's your national champion?
I think I'm going to hold on that, Mike. I don't know if I'm ready to release that information. I mean, I guess technically we could pick the bracket through and reveal it because our picks could still be different because we're picking with the spread. We're not picking straight up.
I mean, that's true.
So I don't think it hurts to pick the bracket. And
I mean, my opinion also is going to change on these games 900 times over the next 4 weeks.
I think looking at it right now, I think in general, I'd probably have to still go with Oregon. I know they have the toughest path, but they're the best team. And I think before I dive in too much, I would pick Oregon to win the national championship. I just don't see a team on the right side of the bracket that is going to beat them. If Georgia doesn't have Carson Beck,
that's like Oregon. Because you got to think like the game that Penn State just played against them. Like, I feel like that's and if Penn State plays that way against probably any other team, they win. Mm-hmm. But I feel like that was probably the best Penn State has, and they still lost. Win. Like, I don't know that Notre Dame has that game offensively in them. I mean, they could. Jeremiah Love's really good. Just give him the ball and watch him run for 70 yards and see what happens. But
we have Mr. Larry tuning in. Go Irish. And thank God for the Holy Cross priests.
That's how we got our tickets.
And I'm not trying to knock Notre Dame either. I don't have much else to go on right now. And it's completely
no, for sure.
BS pick to say that Oregon would win it. But I might change my mind before these games actually occur in the next 2 weeks.
Well, and I mean, and we saw too, like, Georgia lost their starting quarterback potentially for the year in a conference title game.
Mm-hmm.
Like, injuries could happen and something weird could happen that changes our perception. Like, let's say that, Clemson comes out and beats Texas by 40. And then all of a sudden we're sitting there like, oh God, maybe we got to take these guys serious. And then maybe they beat the crap out of Arizona State. And then we get an Oregon-Clemson matchup and it's like, hey, are we sure Oregon's going to
Or, God forbid, Ohio State actually plays up to their $20 million roster capability. I don't know if, and this is homerish of me, I don't know if anyone's beaten them if they could actually play to what they're worth and Ryan Day not pucker his butthole up super tight in any of these games. Like, I don't think many can argue that they're not probably from top to bottom on paper the most talented team. I'm not saying on the field, I'm saying on paper, and with a lot of paper they paid to have that roster.
But that's also one of those things that
can they play up to it? And at this point, I would say no.
Who have they shown the ability to play to that level against?
And Ryan, if you're asking me today, I'm picking Tennessee to win that game right now.
I wouldn't go that far.
Huh?
You're just trying to do the reverse. You're trying to reverse Jason.
I'm not. I have 2 weeks. I'm going to do a lot of due diligence and following Ohio State through my podcast and get the vibe of this team. I still don't think they have to get past the Michigan, and I don't think they're there yet. I think the players are still hung up on it too much. So,
yeah, and I agree with Michael's point. It's tough because I don't think there's any team that's the clear-cut favorite this year, which is fun.
Absolutely.
I very much enjoy this. I like going into this playoff and looking at 12 teams and saying, I could see any one of these teams winning. Like, let's say SMU gets hot and they shock Penn State. Well, then they don't have exactly the toughest matchup against Boise State after that. And then you get one, if you win in Happy Valley and then you shut down one of the Heisman finalists, then are you going to be really sitting there scared of Notre Dame or Indiana or Georgia without their starting quarterback?
Without a starter? Yep.
Probably not. Arizona State, they're playing better than if not better than anyone else in the country.
I think out of my own rooting interest being Ohio State, I think the team I would like to see to win the Natty is Arizona State. I think I'd like to see them do it.
That would
Cam
be fun.
Scattaboo, MVP, then drafted by the Bengals. Perfect scenario.
There you go. The real gym, real coaches.
Quick reminder, guys, we are not going live tomorrow night. We're going to do only 2 this week. So we'll be back on Wednesday to save our material up for the next 2 weeks after this. And Ryan's got family coming into town.
Yeah,
so
Larry's coming into town.
We are going to do a Wednesday night. Still working out the kinks fully on what we want to do for that, but we'll come up with something interesting.
Probably a lot of schadenfreude on our terrible picks that we had preseason. Something along those lines. All right, everyone. Thanks for joining us tonight. Everyone, thanks for chiming in with the questions. As always, you can find us live on YouTube whenever we do this at ITPCFB. Make sure you're subscribed to the channel there. And if you'd rather listen to us in your podcast form, we're on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your shows. Make sure you're subscribed so you can get notified whenever these episodes drop. And while you are there, go ahead and drop a star review and a rating if you feel so inclined. We'd appreciate it. It helps us grow the show. And it'll be beneficial for us heading into the off season when we got to find things to talk about. Thanks everyone for tuning in. Again, we'll be back with you guys Wednesday night this week. Go Bobcats! Back champions!
Good show. It was fun to talk about.